Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, we're covering all the home teams for you. The Tulane Green Wave, the LSU Tigers, the New Orleans Pelicans, and of course your New Orleans Saints. To break it down for us, two of the best we have in this city. From CrescentCitySports.com, one of the best websites we have in the city when it comes to sports. Les East, award-winning journalist, along with my good friend Jude Young, also voice of the UNO Privateers. Guys, welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with you, Jude, and of course our friends over at CrescentCitySports.com.
Well, that's what it's all about. We're still busy. There's no slow season in Louisiana in sports. Of course, a big weekend of college baseball, and we'll have that covered in Baton Rouge. And keep our eyes on two other Louisiana teams and a couple of other NCAA regionals. Of course, the Saints are in OTAs. My colleague here has been covering that for CrescentCitySports.com. Good piece up on Latavius Murray and his transition as a new running back for the team on Crescent City Sports right now. And of course, the Pelicans, drama all off season as we wait to hear what happens with Anthony Davis. I think we know, but we're going to cover that from gavel to gavel, as well as free agency and the draft, of course, lurk. All of that at CrescentCitySports.com.
Beautiful. Les, welcome back. Tell the folks about where they can find all your great work.
Well, thanks, Eric. In addition to CrescentCitySports.com, and this is supposed to be the off season for both the Saints and the Pelicans,
right.
But they're both keeping us busy over there. I'm also covering a variety of things for the Daily Iberian newspaper in New Iberia and The Advocate. And as always, I cover LSU for SaturdayDownSouth.com.
Guys, we were talking before we came on tonight. Both of you guys are going to be at the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame next week. Talk a bit about that.
Well, it's exciting because it's a great class when you talk about the depth of it, covering many different sports, not just football, which is the headline part of the class this year, but sports like volleyball. Danielle Scott, the first volleyball player to go in, who was a national star for Team USA, great college career, and certainly deserves the recognition. T-Berry Porter, one of the great rodeo cowboys of all time, and one of Louisiana's best, obviously gaining recognition. But of course, the two that everybody is interested in and will be able to see on CST if they're not in Natchitoches with us, Les Miles, and that's the story in and of itself, but he certainly deserves to be there, even though his career continues. And Peyton Manning, who is just starting that run of many halls of fame so that he'll be inducted into and already has been.
And of course, Les will be getting an award there as well.
That's what I hear.
Well, thank you. Apparently I will be. We'll find out more about that next weekend. But you're right, it's an exceptional class that's going into the Hall of Fame. Of course, Peyton and Les are the two headliners, but Roger Cador, the longtime baseball coach at Southern University, that's a very significant person going in as well. And, of course, a big season for the Jaguars. We'll probably get to that in a few moments. And I just love the fact that the rodeo guy is going in. I just think it's great that they can be so inclusive to bring in people from things that are somewhat off the beaten path. So that's pretty cool.
And from what I understand, they did an incredible renovation up there. It's supposed to be a great footprint now.
It's a gorgeous museum and definitely a unique look compared to maybe other sports type halls of fame because of the architecture involved. It's right along the Cam River Lake in historic Natchitoches, which is probably one of the hidden gems as far as bed and breakfast areas to visit throughout the year. So it's a beautiful area. Of course, the steel magnolias background, so folks probably understand how beautiful it is, but it is on the other end of the state. So it's a trek for us, but it's one we always enjoy this time of year.
Congratulations, Les.
Well,
on
thank
your
you.
upcoming award.
And I'll just echo what he says. Natchitoches really is just a wonderful place. So if people have not gone up there, the Hall of Fame is sort of a crown jewel now, but it's just a great community.
Yeah, no doubt. Guys, let's start with Tulane and Travis Jewett. Washington State, his alma mater, seems to be coming calling, and he was an assistant coach there for a while. He seems to have been on the hot seat since he took the job at Tulane. And one of the things I talked about this week on the show was that, for him, why not go back to your alma mater, get a fresh start, be in a situation where you're not going to have alumni and fans breathing down your neck based on what Rick Jones did with the program, based on what David Pierce did with the program before he moved on to Texas. I'm of the opinion, that there may be some in the Tulane camp that are saying, you know what, go, because of everything that has happened here, make it a little bit easier on them going forward. What's your take on Travis Jewett? You think that at some point within the next couple of weeks, he'll be in Washington State? I
think he will be, and I think it is the best move for all parties concerned. A lot of people calling my radio show that I didn't mention on WGSO 990 AM a couple nights a week throughout the year, wondering, well, Travis Jewett, is he doing enough? Is he doing enough? Literally all season long asking that question, and the reality was I think he had done enough to earn another year as head coach. Year 3, you get over 30 wins, you are a 3 seed in the American Conference when you get to the tournament. So that's real progress there after 2 down seasons where he'd only averaged 26 wins. But the reality is it's the one sport at Tulane that people care about in the community that has high standards. And the fact that we're not talking about the Wave again playing in the NCAA tournament is not acceptable to the fan base, and it shouldn't be acceptable to the administration. And I think Travis Jewett, there is a connection there, obviously, with him being an alum and being an assistant there before. But Washington State's not a good baseball job. The very fact that this news came out pretty quickly from sources who know that scene, that he's interested in it, tells you that he needs a bailout plan. And it's the smart decision for him, and it opens the door for Tulane to get somebody in there who can build a deeper, more competitive roster. Looking at what Tulane has coming back next year and knowing they're losing a first-round pick in their lineup to begin with, pitching wasn't all that good and not deep. It's a rebuild job again. I think when it comes down to it, Jewett couldn't get the job done. There are some difficult circumstances when you talk about recruiting there. Not a lot of shortcuts as far as the JUCO route. You're going to have somebody who can handle that situation. He came from schools like Vanderbilt and Arizona State. It's easier to win at those places for different reasons. You've got to get the right person, and I know Tulane fans locally want it to be a Tulane person, and we can talk about that if you like.
And we will. Well, your thoughts, Les?
Well, I agree that it would be the best thing for all parties involved. I think if it did happen, whatever improvement Tulane showed this year, I think can be attributed to a large degree just to playing a weaker schedule. Their RPI is actually lower than it was his first 2 years, even though their win-loss record was better because they diluted the non-conference schedule. So I'm not sure how much progress he actually made there. I think it's interesting you mentioned Tulane people. I think that may make Washington State even more attractive to him than it already was because he's seen what the attraction is to local people at a program. And he's been on the wrong side of that for 3 years because there were a lot of local people who were bypassed in favor of him. He had that burden to deal with. Going home to a place where he would be the favored son, I think, becomes even more attractive to him. So it just seems that Washington State's not going to get a lot of great candidates over there. He's probably as good a candidate as they can get. It's certainly got to be attractive to him, and I think it would be attractive to Tulane to be able to start over.
Couldn't agree more. Let's talk about some local candidates. Obviously, we start with Andy Canizero at Holy Cross. Would like to probably get back into the college game. He is an alumni, but You got pretty good coaches that have Tulane pedigree all over college baseball right now that may have an interest.
Right, and the two most prominent ones that are going to come up first and foremost, Jake Gautreaux, lead assistant at Mississippi State. Look, he's a hot name. He's in a position that Cannizzaro used to be in at LSU before he got the Mississippi State head coaching job. The thing is he going to take that risk when he's in a position at a high-profile program where maybe a bigger and easier job could await if he just stays put for a little while longer? And then there's Matt Reiser, who they can have. Look, he's done a wonderful job at Southeastern. He works for a great boss who used to be the baseball coach in J.R. Teagues, and it's a consistent, well-supported program on its level in the Southland. But Reiser, as an alum, former player, would love to have the chance to be at Tulane. And if he winds up being the fallback option in this search, then I think Troy Dannon will have done a better job than he did the last time around, shooting for the idea of somebody. And this goes back to why fans weren't happy with Jude, who had the 15 years of experience as an assistant, including at prominent programs, but not one facing the challenges that Tulane has. Having somebody who knows Tulane from the inside would probably be a real advantage for that coach coming in. And the fact that, like you talk about fanfare at Washington State, they will be happy and supportive early on and be willing to go ahead with some of the growing pains of somebody that is a Tulane guy.
Those are three names out there. There are many more. But again, I got to feel that Tulane, the base of Tulane fans, Tulane alumni, would like to have one of their own back in that position.
I don't think there's any doubt that they would. And most schools, if they have a choice between an alum and a non-alum, all other things being equal, they want one of their own, somebody they're comfortable with, somebody they know, somebody who appreciates the school and the program. I don't see how Matt Reiser does not get this job. Of course, you could have said that 3 years ago.
Sure.
So it comes down to what does Troy Dannon want to do? Does he want to follow the path that the locals want him to follow, or is he convinced that the best way to do this is to bring in his own person from the outside? He tried that with Jewett. It hasn't worked out all that well. Matt Reiser has as good a resume, I think, as you could ask for if Tulane goes looking for a baseball coach. Not just the connection to the university, but just the fact that he is a very, very good baseball coach and has proven it over an extended period of time. To me, there are several good candidates, but Matt Reiser seems like a no-brainer.
And by all accounts, Troy Dannon the first time around had a vision for the Tulane Athletic Department, which was new and fresh and nothing about previous history. But he discounted the fact that when it came to baseball, winning seasons were a given. It was all about competing for conference titles and playing in the NCAA tournament. So to go down that road now and having a better understanding of the fact that there is a loyal fan base to baseball, there is a rich history for that program, that you can pull from that history in order to win, I would guess he would have learned his lesson, just like he learned his lesson as far as the basketball coaching situation. Went for a name when he really didn't know what to do, and it was a failure. And Mike Dunleavy, a guy who didn't know the college game, goes out there and gets a very good up-and-comer in Ron Hunter, who I guarantee you will do better than Dunleavy. I don't know how well he'll do, but he'll do better than Dunleavy, and did have some connection when you look at the background of Perry Clark, who was the most successful modern basketball coach they had. There was some positive history to pull from basketball. There's a whole lot more when it comes to baseball.
No doubt. Let's stay with baseball. Let's talk a little bit about the NCAA regionals. 3 teams from Louisiana make it. We'll get to LSU in a moment. McNeese and Southern make it. Southern, again, winning the SWAC. McNeese to Southland. Talk about it.
Right. Those are 2 programs that are in good hands. You talk about young head coaches. Justin Hill has done a nice job, and he has a history of being on staffs that have been to the NCAAs, but this is McNeese's first trip to the tournament. Of course, they're the auto bid qualifier since 2003, so they're happy to be there. But just a couple of years ago, they won the regular season title in the Southland, which is an accomplishment when you talk about how good of a program Reiser has at Southeastern, how consistently good Sam Houston State is. So that's real progress under Hill. So they go in as a 3 seed that most thought would be a 4 seed. That gives them an opportunity, although Indiana State's really good, 41 wins, and they have an ace that they've got to deal with on Friday that's going to make it difficult, but at least they're not playing a 1 seed. Look, if they can win that game and get to the winner's bracket game against Vanderbilt, who I think is the best team in the country, that's a victory in and of itself, and everything else is lagniappe. but I have a feeling for the Cowboys themselves, it's already all lagniappe. And of course, Southern dominated the SWAC, held their own in some games against the big boys in the regular season too, and they can flat out hit the ball. So they go up to Mississippi State completely fearless, and I don't know how Mississippi State's going to handle their pitching in that first game, but they better take the Jags seriously because they have nothing to lose. The program asked not to be sent to Baton Rouge. They were excited about the opportunity. Get this, they were excited about going to Starkville.
Right.
Who knew?
Stark Vegas.
But Stark Vegas, and they put that in their own headline when they put out their release, as a matter of fact. So they're thrilled about the opportunity, and because they have nothing to lose and they have talent with the bats, that makes them dangerous.
You covered Southern for a while. Roger Cater did an incredible job there, and this is a pretty good baseball team that beat LSU this year.
Yeah, it's a very good baseball team, and the Southern baseball program has a lot of tradition, thanks to Roger Cater and the job he did over an extended period of time. And eventually, you know, it ran its course under him, and they ran into a lot of academic issues, APR issues here over the last few years. The job that they have done in that athletic department, not only in rebuilding the baseball program, but in terms of getting their academic house in order, is really remarkable. And I just think it's a great story that they're back in the NCAA tournament where they've been before. Yeah. And it's a really good program. It's bounced back, but I think the stuff they've done off the field is as impressive as what they've done on the field. And just one quick thing about McNeese. I think the fact that the committee made them a number 3 seed tells you a lot about that program, that they looked at the Southland Conference tournament champions and said this team deserves to be a 3 seed.
Yes.
So that speaks well of the program.
And
also.
the entire conference, which I keep saying is a very good league.
Right.
And those teams are very competitive every year when they go into the NCAAs, particularly what we've seen from Sam Houston and Southeastern.
Let's talk about LSU baseball, a little bit of Hoover magic last week. Not a lot of people thought they were even going to be able to advance in that tournament. You get the 17-inning game with Mississippi State. It ended at 3:03 a.m. I was there, not there, but in front of that television. And then, of course, the miraculous win against Auburn. And then of course, kind of running into a little bit of coming back, beat Mississippi State, and then running into a little buzzsaw in Vandy. They become the 13th seed, which again a lot of people thought they were barely going to get into this thing, if at all. People looking at the 16th seed. The committee thought enough of them to put them at 13. They host the Baton Rouge Regional. LSU, Arizona State, Southern Miss, and Stony Brook. Everybody remembers the Stony Brook from 2012 in that regional. Let's talk about first of all the situation with LSU now. From what Baseball America has said, this is the toughest regional of all the regionals in Baton Rouge that LSU is going to face this weekend in terms of the teams that are coming there. I guess the first question is, considering what happened in Hoover, have they turned the corner here?
Well, they're close to turning the corner, but it's about finding that consistency from game to game as far as putting it all together. There's still so many question marks about the rotation. I found it interesting that they're going with Landon Marceau, who's been their best pitcher by far for about 6 weeks now, going with him against Stony Brook. So that tells you how much Paul Maneri has respect for the Seawolves. This isn't a team like the one that beat them in 2012. True. But they're still a scrappy mid-major and another team with nothing to lose. And those kids, they're going to pull from 2012 and believe they can come into Alec Box and win. So that's important to remember. But yeah, I still worry about the starting pitching overall. And I found that the choice of Marceau for Game 1 tells you that Maneri is willing to do what he can to keep his bullpen arms fresher for what he believes are the more dangerous teams. Arizona State and Southern Miss can both hit. Southern Miss in particular has a deep pitching staff that LSU might have to deal with if it goes into a regional where both teams have to deal with losses, but Arizona State leads the country in home runs. Right. So that is a reason why this is the deepest regional. I think they hope for Marceau to pitch like he has the last 6 games, 5-1, under 2 ERA. The Destrehan freshmen take them deep into the game and keep those bullpen arms like Todd Peterson, Zach Hess, Devin Fontenot, who are capable of going 3, 4, 5 innings. Keep them for the more dangerous lineups. I think that's the reason behind his decision, because after that, Eric Walker, he's a location guy without great stuff. Yes. He's going to have to start a game. And Cole Henry's the most talented starter on the staff, but he's a freshman who's only seen about 50 pitches in the last 2 months, and that was at the SEC tournament. Yes. He wasn't particularly sharp in those games, and he's going to have to start. So it's going to come down to LSU's bullpen, I think, more than anything, and they have to get off to a good start against Stony Brook because they're going to rely on those relievers so
Same
much.
question to you, Les. Have they turned the corner? Give me a synopsis of what you think is going on with LSU.
I don't know if they've turned the corner or not. I mean, it was encouraging the way they played in Hoover. They had a do-or-die game to open with South Carolina. They responded. They won.
Right.
They had the very difficult 17-inning loss to Mississippi State. They came back, won 2 more games, run-ruled Mississippi State in the rematch. So there were a lot of good things happened there. They ran out of pitching by the time they got to Vanderbilt, partly because of the 17-inning game. So I think it's encouraging that they responded to some difficult circumstances, won 3 games, hit the ball well in some games, pitched the ball well in some games. So I think they're showing signs of coming around. I think it's a little premature to say they've turned the corner, but I think you're right. Paul Maneri has a lot of respect for Stony Brook based on what happened in 2012. This is not as good a Stony Brook team, as you said. It's not as good as an LSU team as it was in 2012, despite the preseason expectations. So that's going to be an important game. They need to win that game, stay out of the bullpen as much as possible, get into the winner's bracket, and hope, I assume Cole Henry, but whoever starts against presumably Arizona State, if they play them in the winner's bracket, that would be really a pivotal game. But one thing I want to mention about Stony Brook real quick is I covered that super regional in 2012. And that Stony Brook team was not a fluke. It was not a Cinderella. Right. It was one of the best baseball teams in the country. They outplayed LSU. They made more outstanding defensive plays than I can count. It was a rain-delayed super regional, all kinds of complications. They handled it better than LSU did. And when it ended, the LSU fans hung around to let them take a victory lap around Alec Box, high-fiving the players. They took a lot of criticism for that from some other fans, allowing that to happen on their field. I thought it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen covering sports. Stony Brook, they've had the same coach for like 26 years. It's a good program, and it's good to see him back in Baton Rouge.
Les, you think they can win this regional?
LSU?
Yeah.
I think they can. It's going to be difficult. Like I said, I think winning that opener without having to go into the bullpen much, if at all, I think will be a real key. But I don't know if they're going to win it. I would say that Arizona State is a team that they're going to have to keep the ball in the ballpark against Arizona State, and that's where their pitching comes into play. Again, so they can win it. I'm not sure that they will win it. I think one of the reasons why this has been rated the most difficult field is probably because LSU got a host site partly because they're LSU, because of the tradition of the program, the fact they're going to sell tickets. Right. So, we're going to bump you up a little bit and give you this regional because of who you are and who you have been in the past, but you're going to have a tough field to deal with because you're one of the weaker teams that we awarded a regional to.
I agree 100%. Your thoughts?
LSU's still a coin flip to win the regional because they get the easier first game, no disrespect to Stony Brook. But the key is going to be, I think, winning the first 2 games for LSU. If they can't do that, it's probably a bridge too far, even a Southern Miss, because I think they have deeper pitching as far as guys who can go deep in the games, perhaps, than LSU. The Golden Eagles are really underrated, and they've been a good program for a decade plus now as far as one that could compete in good years with the best teams in the country. So LSU really needs to find a way to win those first 2 games, because even if they were to have to, say, lose on the Sunday after going 2-0 and go to a Monday game, they've got enough pitching to go against a Southern Miss or the hitting of Arizona State 4 games. They've got enough arms for that. Anything further than that, deeper and having to play more games, is probably going to tax that pitching staff too much. On the flip side, maybe the Heat this this time of year and the way the ball carries. There have been complaints about how Paul Mainieri recruits. Now, this isn't as small and scrappy a team as the ones that he's recruited since that first trip to TD Ameritrade at the College World Series in Omaha, where the ball wouldn't carry, and he thought, well, you have to win with speed and contact. They've got a lot of speed in the outfield, but they do have a couple of thumpers. But guys like, when you think about Antoine Duplantis, for example, who they have the opportunity to be able to hit the ball out of the ballpark maybe more now since we're getting into the weather of June, even though he's had a fine season in that area. There's several hitters that qualify like that. But when it comes down to, we've talked about the pitching, Duplantis is consistent, but really Zach Watson and Daniel Cabrera, who have been so streaky this year, the other two starting outfielders, they have to step up and be consistent at the plate and come up big with runners in scoring position, because if those three hit together, LSU can play and beat any team in the country. That trio is the heart of their order.
And I'm glad you brought up Southern Miss, just because Arizona State, it makes a lot of headlines because of the home runs. They're the number 2 seed, but they played their best baseball at the beginning of the season, struggled late.
Right.
Southern Miss played its best baseball late in the season. So don't sleep on Southern Miss.
They threw a no-hitter in their conference tournament, and on the third day of the tournament, that tells you a little bit about their depth.
No, it's going to be a tough regional. It ought to be a good regional to watch as well. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight on our panel from CrestCitySports.com, Les East and also Jude Young. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to jump into LSU basketball when we come back. Will Wade, the SEC meetings. We'll talk some LSU football. LSU Alabama no longer on primetime TV. We'll get into that, and then we'll get into the Pelicans. Talking a little bit about Anthony Davis, David Griffin, their meeting yesterday. Also, we'll get into possible trade scenarios. Where is Davis staying? Is he going? And then Les has been at both practices for the Saints for the open sessions for OTAs. We'll get his take on the Saints. We'll also get Jude's take on the Saints as well. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Stick with us.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Tonight, our guest, Jude Young and Les East of CrestCitySports.com. Let's shift to basketball. Will Wade met with the media this week at SEC Media Days. SEC, the Destin, meetings. Meetings. So, guys, first of all, it was said by Scott Woodward that he wanted to meet the media, but I always understood that the coaches had to meet the media. For all the basketball and football coaches, baseball's a little different because a lot of those guys are involved in regionals and tournament play. I've never seen Will Wade nervous in front of a camera or in front of the media. He's always seemed to have command of press conferences. I went back and looked at the tape a second time, and I see his hands are shaking. He's not making eye contact. He's humming, and of course, at one point, he even puts his hands behind his back because I think he realizes his hands are shaking. And rightly so. Look, it's hard to be able to face the media after everything that he has gone through, and he knew those questions were going to be coming from some of them from some of those guys like Pat Forty, who dropped the story on Yahoo. Your thoughts about Will Wade? Look, I said on this program and on my radio show, he will not be on the bench for LSU next year. But it surely seems that this thing has changed now with the FBI not willing to give their investigation over to the NCAA, with again not Will Wade nor Sean Miller having to testify in the trial. Also, the situation with again the everything that was put into the trial in terms of wiretaps, etc., being sealed by the judge, was now would have to be unsealed. NCAA now has a investigative arm that is different than it used to be. It's more outside of the NCAA. They have more investigators, ex-FBI agents, etc. They're doing that. It's not the 3, 4, 10 guys that were trying to cover the entire NCAA. It's a whole different animal now. The NCAA went after Sean Miller immediately, but as was pointed out to me on my show today by one of my guests, they had a year to be able to go after it and figure out what was going on with Arizona. They haven't had that much time with LSU. You look on the flip side and you look at Javonte Smart coming back, Mays, Taylor, Walt Williams returning, the fact that Trenton Walford, the five-star product out of Alabama, has signed with LSU. I think a lot of people feel that, again, that maybe LSU has dodged a bullet here. I don't know if I'd go that far, but again, it was a different Will Wade, even though it looks like he's got a pretty good team that's going to be returning and should compete for a title in the SEC once again with the returning stars.
They should. I think Will Wade was worried because he's very close to the finish line of this. I think he is almost in the clear because at this point, when you look at what we know, I don't think they have anything else on him on Javonte Smart other than hearsay from the statement from the text from the trial, right? And we know that both Wade at the SEC meetings and Naz Reid have publicly denied any sort of cash deal that was reported at $300,000. Those are the two cases here, or the two instances that could cause trouble for him and for LSU. And unless something new comes up that we don't know about, I think he's in the clear. Les and I were on this show with you during the spring, right around when the tide was turning. We both told you, I think he is going to be the coach again. I think he is going to coach next year. You don't get five-star recruits, as competitive as recruiting is, to pick you if they don't think that the program's going to be fine for them. When they don't expect to be there long, they expect next season to be just fine for them and the program to be able to compete
Plus
for
this
championships.
guy's coming back, right?
Right, and you've got all these players that are willing to come back, although I think all of them really needed to for their pro stock. Yes, he's got all of them coming back. He's got another stud forward coming in. It sure does look like he's going to be in the clear. And I would be nervous, too, if the greatest chance of screwing that up was saying something the wrong way, especially when you have hostile media like 40 in the house trying to get you to say something the wrong way.
Les, you've been pretty adamant about, again, everybody kind of overlooking what went on here and just pretty much saying, you know what, it's LSU, we're going to back our guy here. What are your thoughts? Do you think that he'll be on the bench next year? Do you think this is kind of cleared out? Or do you think that the NCAA will be methodical in trying to be able to garner the information and we may see something down the line here?
Well, first of all, the guy who refused to talk to his bosses at LSU wanted to talk to the media about it, right? Okay. Just wanted to get that straight. It's beginning to look like he's going to survive this, and it's been trending that way, like you mentioned. We talked about it several weeks back. It's been trending that way for a while. There are two separate things here. One is, will he survive? And two, is he innocent? And they seem to be totally unrelated to one another because there are two questions he needs to answer. In my mind, he may never have to answer it, is one, is that you on the tape that the FBI has where you say you made a strong blank offer to Javonte Smart?
Sure.
Is that you? And what do you mean by an offer? What was the offer? I can't conjure up an innocent explanation for that if it is in fact him on that tape saying those words. Maybe there is an explanation, but I can't think of it. If he can't answer those questions in any way other than saying, yes, it's me, I said it, and it was an offer to him, then he should not be the coach at LSU. But it's looking like he will be the coach at LSU because at no point in the immediate future is he going to be compelled to answer those questions, apparently.
Right. Unless the NCAA comes in with an investigation.
But he already has, or he wouldn't have been reinstated as the coach.
He says he answered those questions behind the scenes.
Right. He answered them to LSU with NCAA representation in the room. That's what we know. So he must have come up with some sort of answer for those words. And I could conjure up a passable, but let's get real, not believable explanation. You can say it's an offer for a local kid, Scotlandville magnet product, and Javonte Smart, and for his family that's more advantageous than him going someplace else. And the offer is we're going to really take care of you and your family better than anybody else. There, I just came up with a vague explanation for what we know is not the truth. Because you talk about whether he's innocent or not being under examination here. Of course it's not. It's a matter of, do they have any hard evidence on him? Because LSU's already bypassed any concerns about whether he's innocent. They're only concerned with, can they come up with something that's going to get us in trouble with the NCAA? At least now with the renegotiated contract with Wade, LSU feels more comfortable that they can fire him with cause. And since the damage is already done, they'll have to accept it no matter what at this point. So they're willing to take the risk because their fans are happy. The board apparently is happy.
Yes.
Big donors apparently are happy. And as we found out in text messages, it doesn't sound like the governor of the state of Louisiana, an LSU guy, was terribly concerned about whether he was innocent or not.
Sure.
Just, well, what's going on?
Right, no doubt.
Well, I just have a vision of him sitting in that meeting and saying, no, I made no inappropriate offer, and meanwhile he's waving an SEC championship ring in their face while he's saying
Obi-Wan Wade, right?
Because that's what this is all about. Is we like the way this guy wins. Our program is doing better with him as the coach. We want to find some way to keep him, and we don't care what he did.
Right. You mentioned the governor. Amy Just's article on a public records request by the New Orleans Times, speaking of NOLA.com, on calls by Governor Edwards to Joe Oliva, then the athletic director, Board of Supervisors Chairman James Williams, about the Javonte Smart suspension and reinstatement, also what was going on with Will Wade. Now, I talked about it on my radio show today. You can't have it both ways, okay? You cannot have it both ways. First of all, this has been going on since Huey Long, okay? the intertwining of LSU and, of course, LSU athletics with politics and politicians. You look at the situation with Les Miles a few years ago where Bobby Jindal interceded, and a lot of LSU fans were upset. They wanted Les Miles gone. They thought Jimbo Fisher was signed, sealed, delivered. And again, between F. King Alexander coming out and talking about the fact that you're cutting the budget for LSU to the bone, they're letting professors go, they're closing down programs, etc. The buildings on the campus are deteriorating, and we're going to have to pay one coach millions of dollars to go away and another coach millions of dollars to come here. Now, there's a big difference because we know, the TF would have handled all that. It wasn't coming out of state funds, but it's the perception, and that's what Alexander was worried about. Jindal, whether he was a fan of Les Miles, whatever it was, he interceded as well. For me, yes, it doesn't look like he was doing anything nefarious in terms of Governor Edwards, more that he was trying to find out some information. Maybe he's a big fan. Maybe he knows the Smart family. Or speculation at this point. I don't believe what his spokesman said, that a journalist asked him a question and asked him if he could find out for him, and all of a sudden he's throwing out text and phone calls trying to find out what's going on for a journalist. Come on, give me a break here. But Pat Forty seemed to take exception with it. Again, kind of slamming Louisiana in a tweet.
Saw that.
Okay, and of course Louisiana came out in droves ripping him, which is amazing if you go on that Twitter feed. Guys, is there something wrong with that? Because to me, I do politics as well. As I said with Jindal, look, Jindal's had bigger things to do with the state that was going bankrupt than to worry about Les Miles. And I'll say the same thing about Governor Edwards. You got bigger fish to fry here than worrying about whether Javonte Smart is going to play or not.
Well, you talked about perception in the Les Miles situation with a different governor. Perception comes into play again with a fan base and therefore a donor base that's really excited about LSU basketball. And you could tell the public perception was, we want to keep Will Wade at all costs. So what that means is even people in power started to feel that way. The bigger donors clearly felt that way. And you talk about a governor that has to deal with re-election who is directly linked to F. King Alexander because folks say, well, you're in charge there. You have control over him. So you're going to get blamed as the governor because people care about LSU sports in the state a little more probably than they should. If the head of the school makes a mistake, that hurts an athletic program people care about. It's reality. A big fundraising drive is about to be started again for LSU, which is crucial to the future of the entire university and building up the campus. So if you're the governor and you've got re-election on your mind, you go to a lot of the basketball games and actually enjoy the product, and you think about how important it is to LSU, the flagship university of the state. Look, that's politics in a nutshell. So I understand why he at least had a cursory interest in what was going on, and probably much more than that. But it doesn't seem like he, or at least from the records we saw, did too much other than trying to follow along, which is for him doing due diligence because it is bigger than just a basketball team.
Right. Les, your thoughts? I mean, again, you got a governor, another sitting governor that's getting involved in LSU athletics.
Well, the governor of Louisiana should take an active interest in everything that happens at the flagship university of the state, funded by the state taxpayers. And LSU makes more news locally and nationally, and at least locally and nationally, in sports more so than anything else. That's life, whether you like it or not. So the fact that you have this potentially big scandal going on with one of the more prominent athletic programs, the governor has every right to try and find out what's going on. He should take an active interest in that. Now, how far he goes in getting hands-on in situations like that is debatable. There's no indication, like you said, that he's doing anything significant behind the scenes with this. So I don't have a problem with it. He should have an active interest in that. And this is something that's potentially, it's already given the university a black eye. This whole Will Wade thing has brought negative publicity on the flagship university of the state. The governor would be derelict in his duty if he didn't take an interest in what's going on there. So I have no problem with what we know to this point.
Right. Let's talk LSU, Alabama, not on primetime, not on CBS primetime this season. CBS will air the Notre Dame-Georgia game on September the 21st. Look, not surprising, okay? LSU's lost 8 straight games to the Tide since the game of the century when LSU was number 1 and Alabama was number 2. In Tuscaloosa was a 9-6 game back then. 8 straight years, been beaten by an average of 16.8 points. I think that's according to the New Orleans Times, Picayune, NOLA.com. CBS has a chance to be able to get a marquee matchup. They get Notre Dame, which is a national brand, okay? I mean, they got a shot to do that. You figure Georgia's been on the upswing since Kirby Smart's been there, and what he's been able to do with that. I just say to anybody that is upset about this, hey, LSU beat Alabama, and then you'll be back in prime time. Thoughts?
You just said it all, and I think for LSU, you say, oh, so we don't have to play a night game in Tuscaloosa. Now we're probably going to be at 2:30 on CBS. Sold, we'll take it because it's easier to win during the day in a tough environment than at night, just based on environment. And if LSU finally gets the job done and wins this year, I guarantee you next year's game in Tiger Stadium will be on CBS in prime time. So for the short term, hey, the program should use it as a slap in the face. Ed Orgeron should use it as motivation, saying there's a reason why we're not in prime time. Boys, you're hearing about it. We need to go out there and win. Right. So, I mean, that's what you should expect from him. Use any piece of motivation because they are not on equal terms anymore, and they haven't been for a long time. Alabama's a superpower. LSU's still a top 15 program, but they want to be a top 10, top 5 program consistently again. And to do so, you got to be more competitive with Alabama at the least year in, year out, and you really have to beat them. So this is actually good for LSU in a lot of ways short term. If it continues to be a deal where they're not in prime time on CBS, that means the program's not meeting expectations, and then it's a problem.
Right. Your thoughts?
I agree. It's potentially a good thing for LSU, and the Orgeron will use it as motivation, and the simple solution is beat Alabama. If you're CBS, why wouldn't you pick Notre Dame and Georgia over LSU and Alabama? It's a no-brainer.
It is a no-brainer.
Yeah. I mean anybody who's upset by this, it just isn't paying attention to the realities of what factors into that decision. They made the obvious decision.
Right. And look, it doesn't matter what Notre Dame's record is. They're a national brand. They're going to get some of the major markets that will be tuned into that game. And then you look at Georgia, which has been an up-and-coming program for a while now. Again, to me, when I heard about it, I said, well, that doesn't surprise me at all. Right. And I like your tack. Again, this could be a motivating factor for this program. Hopefully they can turn the corner with LSU and Alabama. Let's talk OTAs. Just wish to the Saints. You've been out there the last 2 weeks. First of all, it's so hard, right, Les? I mean, you're talking about T-shirts and shorts and helmets. You got guys that are trying to learn the system. You're looking for athleticism. Can a guy catch? What's he doing? But when football's played in the trenches and you get hit playing football, it's a lot easier to catch a football knowing that a safety's not going to come over and knock your helmet off. But based on that, what have you seen? What stuck out to you at OTAs?
Well, not much. Like you said, you can't tell a whole lot of this. People want to know who looks good, who doesn't look good, how many games are they going to win. Nobody knows. Sean Payton doesn't know what's going on. They're going to look at the film and they're going to see, okay, who knows what he's supposed to be doing, who doesn't know, who lined up wrong, whose technique is bad. Okay, there's almost nothing good that can come out of these OTAs. It's a question of who messes up. Right. Who doesn't know what they're supposed to be doing, who isn't fundamentally sound, who's not catching on to the way we practice. In fact, I asked Sean about that today, and that's a big thing. This is how we practice. This is the pace at which we practice. This is how we do things. And if you're not catching on to that, that's going to be a red flag. There are very few positives that can come out of this. It's only negatives. Guys dropping passes, quarterbacks throwing the ball to the wrong guy, making inaccurate throws. You can't tell anything about any of the big guys other than maybe a little bit about their footwork.
Yes.
Or who looks like he's not strong enough in the upper body.
Or who's in shape, right?
Right, but there's so little you can tell, okay? Number 9 is the best quarterback. I can tell you that for sure. Number 9 is
sure
the
about
best.
that, Les?
I am
You wanna go out
positive.
on a limb?
I will stand
Despite
by
everybody
that.
saying how great Bridgewater's looking right now, right?
I will stand by that. Number 9 is the best quarterback. Jared Cook is an impressive-looking figure out there at tight end. Michael Thomas is being Michael Thomas. Alvin Kamara didn't practice today because he had a stomach virus, I think. But beyond that, there is so little that you can tell from this. Even training camp, where they put on some pads and there's some contact work going on and scrimmage work, you can't tell much there, but you can tell a little bit. These OTAs, there's almost nothing you can tell from these things, and what you can tell would almost always be negative.
I've always said the coaches, obviously with the eye in the sky, they know what they're looking for. They'll see it in OTAs. They'll see it in training camp. You really can't tell the eye test until they start practicing against another team. And one of the reasons why I've said it all along, especially if you're a veteran, you've been playing against the guy across from you, practicing against him for a couple years. You know the moves, you know the call in a lot of cases, what the guy's going to do on the play. You have some anticipation based on who's throwing the football. So there's a lot of things that go into, again, why a guy can look really good in practice, but when it comes to the games, he's maybe not the same guy playing against another team. So again, you got to kind of take training camp, OTAs, mini camps with kind of a little grain of salt.
And what Les said, so important about the idea of looking for the negatives, unfortunately, because the younger players, especially the rookies, the newcomers, are they struggling with the basics and shorts as far as knowing where they're supposed to be on given plays and that causing mistakes? If they are, then hey, that's a problem that you have to deal with, and you just don't have a lot of time to deal with it anymore. We don't have two-a-days at all during training camp. We only have these voluntary 10 practices, a rookie mini camp that's 3 days, and a mandatory mini camp that's 3 days. And that's it as far as getting the team together and doing anything significant 7-on-7 or 11-on-11. So this is the time where you have to install as much as you can for the mental game and hope that it sticks when guys are worried about getting their heads knocked off.
Retention is part of it, right?
Absolutely.
Retain what you get from the classroom to the practice field.
And if you can't do it in late May, early June, you're going to have real problems in August and beyond.
Yeah, when things are moving very, very quickly. Guys, one of the big issues coming up is, again, the salary cap, and all these players are going to be coming up for contracts. I've gone through it the last couple of weeks. You got a situation where you've got next season, Michael Thomas is up for an extension. You got Breeze, Bridgewater, Pete, Bell, Onyemata, all unrestricted free agents next year. You go into 2021, Kamara, Jordan, Rankins, Wolford, Cook, Edwards, Hendrickson, Davis, and Anzalone. So you got the core of your team that's going to be coming for contracts up for the next 2 years. You got a mega deal you got to come up with Michael Thomas, and there's a lot of chirping out there right now about Cam Jordan being underpaid, rightly so. 19th ranked, one of the top defensive ends in the game. When you look at his salary, 19th ranked overall in terms of defensive ends. About $8 million on the cap right now. Do you anticipate a reworking of Jordan's deal and paying Thomas before the season starts?
I think that would be something that they would like to do, to not even risk him getting out there on any kind of a market talking about Thomas, because it seems like the number floated around for him is around $20 million a year. So he's going to get that money, and he deserves it. He is a special wide receiver who would thrive in any offense because he doesn't even have to be open to be open. He makes unbelievable catches under pressure, strong hands, does it all, and they need him no matter whether they're moving on from Breeze in a year for whatever reason, or if Breeze sticks around for one more championship push. So Thomas is a given. I would think they're trying to go that way, but we don't know what Thomas is thinking. One would think he's happy here, but he may have other visions. We don't know if there's a little Antonio Brown somewhere inside of him. We hope not if you're talking about the future of the New Orleans Saints after what happened with Pittsburgh and Brown, but I would think the front office would be working on that. And you definitely want to keep Cam Jordan happy, because not only can that help you with the salary cap flexibility in future years, but he deserves it. And if you take care of your team leaders, and if Drew Brees is happy on one side of the ball and Cam Jordan is happy on the other, that makes it easier to keep everybody else in line.
Les, they're in a kind of a tough spot considering all these players are going to be coming up the core over the next few years. Look, that's the price you get for drafting well.
Yeah, it is. And I think that there are some decisions that have to be made among the really expensive players like Mike Thomas and Cam Jordan. Do you decide, okay, we're going to put all our eggs there and we have to let a lot of these other guys go? You saw them draft 2 safeties this year, partly, I think, because they're saying we may not be able to keep Von Bell and some of these other guys in the secondary. So they're looking ahead in that regard. You know, Mike Thomas is a guy you definitely want to try and keep, if at all possible, but that is going to create a lot of problems as far as keeping some of these other players that aren't going to cost as much, but there's a trickle-down effect. So they have to prioritize. I think Mike Thomas is probably priority number one as they look ahead over these next 2 years. These people they have to try and lock up long term.
Do you anticipate them doing something they don't normally do, tearing up a contract for Jordan and for Thomas and getting that done this year?
I think that's a possibility. I think there's the franchise tag is another thing that could come into play there. I think, you know, so much of this is tied into what ultimately happens with Drew Brees.
There's no doubt with the dead money that's sitting out there right now.
Yeah, and you're not going to know, I don't think anybody's going to know, including Drew, what he's going to do till late this season or probably after the season. So it's really a complicated thing, and I think it's probably something that they discuss almost on a daily basis, but I don't know that they have any answers at this point.
And I think that Thomas and Jordan are in a different tier from all these other guys we're talking about, and that includes an Alvin Kamara because he's a running back and the shorter shelf life, and he is a smaller running back, and he's probably going to take even more wear and tear this year than he did last year and the year before that. So these two guys are elite at positions where there's no reason to think that they aren't going to continue to be good for several years to come, particularly Thomas because he's so young, and they're so special at their positions. They're amongst the very best in the league, and they're irreplaceable. You're not going to find a like for like. So those are the guys that, if they're willing to come up with something that helps you as far as okay, we've got these guys paid, now we can take care of the rest. I would think Mickey Loomis would be more than open to that, but it does take two to tango, and particularly with Thomas, his market is so huge and coming up that he may just want to wait and play the game when he's free.
And then how do you structure these deals? I mean, especially knowing that you've got this dead money with Brees, because that's going to be one of the keys going forward, you know, as you try to pay the rest of these young and up-and-coming players with the Saints. Let's shift gears to the Pelicans. And look, we've gone over it, guys, right? David Griffin, home run in terms of Vice President of Basketball Operations. He brings in Aaron Nelson, who's heading the training staff, going to be in Vice President in charge of player care. Also, now bringing in Trajan Langdon as the general manager, who was also up for the Vice President of Basketball Operations. Every single thing that Gail Benson has done in the offseason here, it seems to be, again, like she's struck gold, especially, again, the first thing bringing in David Griffin. David Griffin and Anthony Davis met this week. From what we understand, Anthony Davis has not moved off his stance of wanting to be able to be traded. From reports out there now is that the next set of meetings won't necessarily be one-on-one with Anthony Davis, but it'll be Rich Paul and David Griffin. We'll see how that goes. I'm sure they would like to be able to get in front of Anthony Davis and not have this insulation of the agent in between them, but we'll see how it goes. It looks as though on the surface here that Anthony Davis is going to be traded at some point. What are your thoughts on the meeting? What are your thoughts on the possibility of a trade? And then, to me, it is optimal for the Pelicans to trade him by the draft. You get into the free agency market, and all of a sudden you see Durant and Kyrie Irving heading to New York, or Kyrie heading out to Los Angeles. I think it takes away some of the leverage that David Griffin has right now.
It's a tight timeline, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And look, it's certain now that Anthony Davis is going to be traded probably within the next 3 weeks, because the fact that Davis isn't going to meet with Griffin face-to-face again, according to those reports, I'm sure they're true. I'm sure that was released by Rich Paul, Clutch Sports, Davis's agent. So let's just deal with the reality that he is going to be traded. I know David Griffin is dealing with that reality, and it comes down to, well, why is he going to meet with Rich Paul again? Because This could help the Pelicans and Davis get what he wants. In the end, he's almost certain to go to New York, LA, or Boston. There are 2 teams in the New York market that are interested. There are 2 in LA that are interested, and of course the Boston Celtics. They have enough assets to get the job done. Because the importance of Paul here is not to get his client to just verbally agree that, hey, he's going to really consider re-signing with that team. But it's more than that. Davis could opt into another year of his contract. If he says, you know what, I like this trade, I like going here, and Kyrie Irving's going to wind up being here, for example, with me. I want to be paired with a superstar. I don't want to wait another year to be free to try to get with LeBron, and who knows what mid-30s LeBron's going to be like in another year. I want to be a star in a star market with at least one more star with me. That's clearly his end game, and if there's some agreement there on the Anthony Davis side, that will increase what package the Pelicans get back, and it's so complicated at that point to know what Griffin's looking for. But he did say when he worked for the NBA and was a media analyst that if he were the general manager of the Pelicans, now he's in charge of the Pelicans, that he would look for at least one bright young star, at least another quality piece, and just assets, draft picks. And there are several teams that have that, and I'm sure they're debating right now with Langdon, Griffin, and whoever else he's bringing in to help him with this, whether Jason Tatum is that young star, whether Shai Gilgeous-Alexander of the Clippers is that young star. There's a lot of names on a lot of teams that I just mentioned, and they're going to figure out what's the best fit for their future, and they're going to make a deal.
Right. Your thoughts, Les?
Well, I agree. There's no doubt Anthony Davis is gone, and I think the Pelicans will be better off without him, assuming they get market value, and I'm sure Griffin's smart enough to get that. The key to the whole thing, and you touched on it, is finding the place where he is most likely to re-up and sign a long-term deal so that they can get maximum value for him, because teams are going to give up more, obviously, for a guy that they can keep long-term rather than a guy that they're going to rent or roll the dice on. So that's where Rich Paul comes in, and I'm sure that's where the talks are now, is finding where Davis wants to be long-term so that his new employers and Paul can get together on how they can make that happen, which will drive the price up for the Pelicans.
That's an excellent point, because now at this point he's already said, through Rich Paul, doesn't matter if Zion is there or not, I want out of New Orleans. So now at this point, as you both have mentioned, it's probably about, okay, where do we make our deal? Are you guys going to work with us or work against us on this deal? Okay, so that we can get maximum value.
And the reality of Zion Williamson is that I think it actually hurts as far as what it appears to be as far as Davis's vision goes. I didn't think he wanted to ever risk, even though he could have a pretty good team here with Drew Holiday and Williamson and some free agent to come in. That would be a significant one, I would think. That would be a starter with the cap room the Pelicans have. But think about it. You're Anthony Davis, and you've already been here 7 years, and there's an extreme risk that a brighter personality, rookie, 19-year-old is going to steal your spotlight.
He's going to be the star.
Right. He's going to be 1A, and you're going to be 1B. There was no way that Davis was going to risk that, even though he says it's all about winning. He could really win pretty quickly if he stayed. If he wanted to be here, there's no question that the bird in the hand is better for the Pelicans. But the fact that he's not all in, like Griffin said, Davis would have to be, means that there's no doubt that they're going to be better off.
I totally agree.
Real quickly, it would be best for Anthony Davis to be 1B somewhere, because he's not a 1A.
I agree. Again, he's not the alpha. He's proven that here over 7 years. He can't carry a team. You look at the difference between him and the Greek Freak who carried his team. Okay, it's a different situation.
And I'll say it again, Kyrie Irving. I think wherever Davis winds up, that's where Kyrie Irving's going. We'll see, but it seems like the tea leaves are reading that way.
Well, guys, Zion Williams does not sign with Clutch Sports as was rumored. He signs with CAA. Drew Brees is represented by CAA. A lot of the top quarterbacks in the NFL are represented by CAA. Some of the top stars in the NBA are represented by CAA. So that's good news for Pelicans fans. The question for David Griffin, I'll take you first, Les, on this. We only got about a minute or so left. How do you surround Zion to be a winner here? Is it young players, shooters? Or are you going to go with draft picks, and are you going to try to get that other young star that's going to go along with him?
Well, I think ideally you try and get some combination of the two. You try and get at least one young star who's already established himself in the league to some degree but still has some growth, but also pick up draft choices so that you can continue to build and let these guys mature together. so that you can win to some degree initially, but also have a long-term future where you continue to grow year by year with all these young guys.
15 seconds, final word.
Guy who wants the ball late in games so Zion doesn't have to deal with that right away because Drew Holiday isn't that guy. And length that they haven't had, wings that can shoot. Clearly you need that, whether you're the Pelicans with Zion Williamson or any other team in the league. That's how the NBA is set up now for teams to win. Jude
Young, Les Sees at CrescentCitySports.com. Thanks for being with us here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE-TV at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television at statewide, 9 o'clock every Friday night. You can catch me on the radio, Sports 1280, 101.1 FM HD2, and the iHeartRadio app. That's weekdays, noon to 2. Also, you can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. All the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports can also be seen at ericasher.com. Again, special thanks to our guest tonight, Les East, and also Jude Young. Got to check out CrescentCitySports.com as well. Also to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, also Alex Chacon, Naila Jones, and my director, William Hill. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports.